G'day guys, welcome back to Wheelwork. I trust you're doing well as always. So today we are going to do something a little bit different. Considering last episode we did a whole bunch of wiring on this thing, putting the stereo in, I thought we'd have a break from that and get on to doing some more wiring. So here's what we're going to be doing today. Alrighty, so what we've got here is an aftermarket diff lock kit. So this still uses the factory diff lock. The factory diff lock, rear diff lock on these Fortuners can only be engaged in low range four-wheel drive. This allows you to engage it sort of even in for high or even in two-wheel drive if you wanted. Not that you would probably ever do that. The reason why I'm putting that in is with these cars, so how the sort of front diff works in these as well is the front diff is an open diff, so it only drives one wheel at a time. So if the ABS sensors sense slip on a wheel, so say if you're going up a rut, the car lifts up and it puts the left front wheel in the air and that wheel starts spinning, the stability control will apply brake to that wheel to transfer drive to the right front wheel. Issue with that is when the rear diff lock is engaged, all the stability control on the car turns off. So if you had that same scenario, that wheel would still keep spinning. Yes, you would have both your rears locked together, but you would lose that ability on the front wheels. So they're the two benefits. So you can engage the rear diff lock with this kit. You can engage the rear diff lock in any driving mode, as well as you can still maintain the stability control function to operate the front diff the way that works. We've also got a Tow Pro Elite electric brake kit that we're going to put in. We've got a UHF radio. I've had this thing sitting around for about 4 years. I'm just waiting for time to use it, so I know it's a pretty basic thing, but I'm going to use that one. We've got a gated dash cam with an SD card that we're going to put in as well. And I also dug these things out of my racking. A couple of auto meter gauges. One is for volts, the other one is for boost. And there's a couple of cups for them as well. I think I bought these for a customer way back when. It didn't end up happening. Whether I put them in or not, I don't know. But we'll see if we get to that. But all of that stuff is definitely going in. So we'll start on that now. So I'm going to start with the electric brake controller and the diff lock kit. With the brake controller, I actually did make a start on that during the previous video. So the brake controller takes 4 wires. It's just got a ground. It's got a positive wire to the battery. It has a brake signal from your brake light switch or your brake lights, and then it's got an output that goes to your trailer plug. So during the last video, I actually made a little bit of a head start while we were running wires. I did actually pop that trim out. In behind this trim, roughly about there, is the is your trailer wiring module, or like your little ECU, if you call it, that goes down to your trailer plug. So there is just a blue wire taped up inside the loom that doesn't connect to anything, that does feed down to your plug. So I've extended that wire and run it up under the dash. And I also picked up a brake light switch signal from the brake lights itself. I'm not a fan on modern cars tapping in your brake light signal from your brake light switch at your pedal. So I ran a wire from there all the way up to the front as well. So they're done, and those 2 wires are just hanging out under the dash on the other side of the console. So what I'll do is I might start mounting the brake controller and that. The brake controller is going to go into one of these blanks here that I popped out in the previous video, and the diff lock switch will go into the other one. So I'll start with doing that because they should be fairly straightforward and easy to finish. Alrighty, I got the switch for the trailer brakes in. I got that little trim piece through Red Arc itself that fits into the factory spot there, make it a bit neater so you don't have to drill anything. I've plugged it in down here, so that's the main harness there. That's got everything going to it. Essentially all that's left is this power. This cable here just needs to go directly to battery power. Just taped up the excess wiring. This plug here goes to the switch. There's a similar plug to that plugs into the back of the switch. So I'm just going to sort of mount it in there somewhere, get it out of the way, and then that's pretty much done, with the exception of running a power wire to that. Okay, so the brake controller power wire I've just passed through to the passenger side. When I pass some cables through from the engine bay, I'll run a power wire for that and solder that up, and that's done. So while I'm in this area, I'm going to get onto the diff lock kit. So this is just how it is. It's a very simple plug and play. This is your 4-wheel drive / diff lock controller module up here. So there is a small plug and a big plug. maybe get a bit better light like that. So literally all you do, the small plug, you unplug it, you plug it into here, then that plugs back into there. And the big plug, you unplug it from there into there, and then that plugs back in. Run your wire, push in your switch, and it's done. That's as simple as that. Okay, so that's done. So my center console section is all finished. I've filled those blanks with those 2 extra things. Looks pretty good. And behind the glove box area here, I've just run that wiring and cable tied it all up out of the way. I've cable tied the module up out of the way, and I've tucked the extra plugs down between the heater box there and that module that we plugged into. So that's that job done. So now I think I might get on to mounting the antenna for the UHF. So this is what I came up with my antenna. First of all, I didn't want a super long antenna. I didn't want something that was going to extend past the roof line of the car. So that's why I sort of went this shorter option. I know it's not going to give me as good of a range, but you know, that is what it is. I actually did have to buy the antenna. I had the UHF radio, but I didn't have the antenna. So that's the one I went with. So I just sort of went in behind this trim here. There's one 10mm bolt under there that holds the guard down. So I just sort of picked up on that bolt. I did have to trim the back corner off the bracket down there on an angle to get it to fit. I should have recorded a bit more of this, sorry that I didn't. So I've got the one bolt there, and then there's 2 screws that sort of going through the side into the side of the guard there. So that's now nice and strong. She's not going anywhere. And yeah, I've just got the wire hanging out the front of the car, and I'll feed that into the cabin with the rest of the stuff. All right, so one thing I actually forgot to mention before is I do also have 2 light bars that are going to go on this thing, which you will see in future videos. So while I'm running wires and stuff into the cabin, I thought I'd lay in and start wiring in the harnesses for the light bars, sort of try and get that done, kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so that way it's done. By the end of this video, I want to have everything wiring related sorted on this car, so then we can get on to more serious things. So what I've done is I've just pulled both the wiring harnesses out of the light bar kits. They're both the same harness. To make this a little bit easier, I've got a couple of patch harnesses here. These just plug into the back of the factory headlights. So you sort of unplug the plug off the back of the headlight, you plug that to the headlight, you plug that into the plug that would normally go to the headlight, and then you've got your high beam trigger there. So I've got 2 of them. I'm going to pick up 1 off each side of the headlight. And I've also got a couple of steady style Toyota switches, which I'll wire in as well. They go into the dash. And I'm basically going to put them in a couple of the blanks on the driver's side of the dash. So they will go sort of in that area. All right, so I've made a bit of progress. I've got the light bar, one of the light bar harnesses sort of laid in here. That's the relay for it. That's got to go to the battery. I've already earthed it. That's going to be constant power for the brake controller. That's going to be constant power for the second light bar, which I'm going to put the harness on the other side of the engine bay. As you can see, that red wire that goes over to the other side. So that's going to be fused as well. So I've passed all of those wires through into the cabin that I need to. So the power wire for the electronic brake controller is soldered on up there to the other wire, so that's done. And then we've also got the antenna cable there for the UHF radio, and the wire that goes to the switch for the light bar is sitting there. So I'll pass them through to the driver's side of the car now, and then I'll start laying in the other harness. All right, driver's side light bar wiring harness is laid in as well. So I've got the relay there that sort of goes through. I've got the wiring for the switch going through that plug in the firewall. And then I've sort of got the adapter harness down there, all cable tied together down there. So now down here, we have both the plugs for both the light bar harnesses, just to go to the switch. And we've also got the UHF antenna plug. So that's sort of where we're at. Now, I was sort of umming and ahhing, what am I going to do in regards to powering everything, because we've got several powers here. We've got 2 light bars, the electric brake controller and stuff. So I was sort of wondering what's going to happen there. I know there is this accessory fuse box. I can't help but feel there's supposed to be a bracket on that. It's just sort of flapping about there. That's just got 1 plug in it going to the trailer wiring. You can get the pins and stuff to go into here, but they are very small fuses and super fiddly. So what I'm thinking about doing is I've got this fuse box here. This is a Nava fuse box. So you just sort of wire into this, and then it's got a whole bunch of fuses that you can put into it. As you can see, like that. So you've got dual power in, and you just sort of like wire in your fuses as you need. This can support up to 120 amps, which is the other reason why I have decided I'm going to use this rather than using this guy, because this can only support up to, I believe, 60 or 90 amps. The light bars alone are 30 amps each, plus the trailer plug is also 30 amps, so there's already 90 amps, and the electric trailer brakes is also 30, so there's 120 amps. So this guy will do it, that one won't. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to wire everything into that fuse box. Okay, so something like that. I mean, I've still got to tie it up and tape it up and all that, make it all look pretty, and put some fuses in it. So we've got these twin entry powers on the bottom. So what I've done is I've just made up this guy. So that's going to pick up the point where the other one went to on the battery, and then that splits into two, and I'll just feed it one onto each terminal. Cable tie it all up, throw some fuses in it, and then that's all done. All right, so that's how that turned out. So our bottom two wires do both the light bars. The top left one does the electronic trailer brake controller, and the top right one does the actual module for the trailer lights on the trailer plug. So that is all done. We can bring this back on, lock that into place, and that's all finished. So for now, for all intents and purposes, under the bonnet is done. We'll move on to tidying up the inside and getting that finished off. All right, so the UHF radio is done. I've just sort of mounted it up onto the dash there, around the wires and the antenna wire through. Little hand pieces there mounted to the side of the dash. I ran a power wire from the accessory fuse box behind the dash there that's hooked up to accessory power. I didn't want it wired up to constant power. So that's how I've done that, and that accessory wire is powering the UHF. I'll just turn it off for now, so it's not turning on every time I turn the key on. So what I've done is I've got the accessory wire there that I've soldered onto for the UHF, and I've also got some more length hanging down there, as well as an earth wire. So that's what I'm going to wire up my dash cam to as well. And I also ran a white wire here, which is connected to your dash lights or your parker lights, because I need that trigger for the switches that I'm going to put in here for the light bars. And if I choose to put the gauges in, I'll use that for the backlight of the gauges. I still don't know if I'm going to put the gauges in. I'm still umming and ahhing about it, but we'll see how we go. But yeah, so that's that. I'll get on to the dash cam now. So as I've mentioned before, this is the dash cam I'm going with. Again, I actually bought this for another vehicle quite a while back and never ended up using it. So that's why I'm just going to go with this one, just using what I've got. So she sort of looks like that. So that's that. And then you've got the bracket and everything in here and all the wiring and stuff. So I'll get to putting that in. Dash cam is mounted, just sort of tucked it in there behind the mirror. So when you're sitting in the driver's seat, it's actually, g'day. You can't actually see it behind the rearview mirror there, which is good. So I've pulled the A-pillar trim off, and I've just run the wire up across behind the headlining here for the dash cam, and I'm just going to run it down the A-pillar. Be careful, this is an airbag here. I think I am going to try and put those gauges in. So I've just sort of marked on the A-pillar here where I want the brackets to go, right below the handle. So I'll sort of sit down in this area away from the airbag. So yeah, I'm going to get to doing that. I'll get to mounting the gauges and getting them all set up. And I'll put that trim back in, and we'll get to wiring the rest of the stuff down here. Get all that sorted out. Okay, got the A-pillar back in with those gauges mounted. So put the boost gauge at the top, volts gauge at the bottom. So that's just how that all sort of looks. It's all coming together. So it actually look pretty good, sort of sitting there on the side with a couple of black cups. Just ran some conduit around and fed the wires in behind the A-pillar there. So that's all that. So now all that's left is to tidy up this schmozzle down here, get all that wiring sorted out. And I do have to run this tube into the engine bay. That's the boost reference for the boost gauge. Yeah. Gauges themselves wire up quite easily. So as I said, that goes into the engine bay, picks up off a boost reference. So that's basically straight to inlet manifold. There's this wire that comes off the boost gauge as well. That's just a 2-wire cable. That's just for the illumination of it. So that's just power and negative for that. And then the volt gauge, similar story. We've got power and negative, and then we've got a white for the illumination. So, because that's just literally reading battery voltage. So that's super simple. So we'll just connect all of that stuff up now. Get it all wired up before I run that into the engine bay. Make sure the volts gauge works and the backlights work. I will wire up a plug for the dash cam and make sure that works. So yeah, get into it. Just like that, we're all done. So I ended up wiring in a little accessory power thing under the dash, which is just mounted up under the dash. That's got a USB output, because that's what the dash cam plug has on the end of it, is a USB style plug. There's also a second one under there as well if I want to wire up another charger of some sort or whatever, I can. Got the 2 steady light bar switches in. That was a little bit of stuffing around with the wiring on them to make them work with the harness. But there is a really good video on Steady's website done by Sam from Built Not Bought as to how to get them wired up and get a dash illumination trigger. Obviously I've got the gauges in. I tied it up the wiring a little bit more. Well, not tied it up, I more rerouted the wiring a little bit at the back to neaten them up a little bit. So now we will turn our parkers on, see if these gauges light up, which they do. It's good. And our little Steady switches down here, they also light up. So that's good. So we'll start the car. Obviously auto headlights being in here, so they'll turn on when we start the car. So there we go, got a volt reading. 13.6, 13.7 volts. So that's good. I've still got to run the tube for the boost gauge. It's just sort of sitting in the engine bay. I haven't connected that to the motor yet, so that's why that's not reading anything. There goes our dash cam chiming away, showing that that's up and running. So the other thing I just want to check if I turn high beam on is if these work, which they do. And if I turn the high beam off, they should turn off automatically, which they do. Fantastic. Great, all good. Okay, so that's done. I've run that tube through, just sort of cable tied it up around the back of that pipe, and I've just connected it on down here. There's a little T-piece there, just behind the throttle body, that just goes in the manifold vacuum. So, yep, it all works. I've only just stalled it up a little bit, and it is making a little bit of boost just here in the garage, but obviously I've got to take it for a drive to test it properly. So that's it, that is all done. And there you have it, guys. Another day's worth of work on this car is done. I was able to get all of this stuff done in the majority of a day between doing a couple of other small jobs that I had in today. But yeah, this stuff is done. I really wanted to get everything electronic and wiring related on this car finished first and foremost, before I get into any of the other stuff. Just, it's not something I really enjoy doing, the wiring stuff, and I knew that there was a fair bit of it. It's just tedious work and it's time consuming, and I just wanted it out of the way. So now that that stuff's done, we can get on to bigger and better things, I guess. But yeah, for all intents and purposes now, everything on this car is in regards to electronics is done, with the exception of mounting the 2 light bars. When I do a couple of other things to this car, I'll get them mounted and plugging them into the wires that are already there, ready to go. So that's all sorted. So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate the support. If you want to see more, please remember to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next video, which should be out within the next week or so. So yeah, thanks very much. Take it easy. See you soon.